So hi, welcome. My name is Naomi, and this is Anastasia, and we are the founders of KITRO. We're excited to be here today and to spotlight the growing issue of food waste. Anna and I are dedicated to tackling this issue in the hospitality industry, and we're here to show you some of the financial and environmental benefits of addressing this issue. So looking at food waste on a social level, there are over 800 million people who don't have enough food to eat. Yet, when we look around, we have an abundance of food. Especially during this conference, where we can enjoy so many delicious and variable types of food, but it raises a question: is there really not enough food to feed our entire population? Well, actually, 1/3 of all the food that is produced along the global supply chain ends up in the bin. This is equal to over 1.3 billion tons, and equates to $680 billion every year. The social implications of food waste are devastating. If we could cut food waste by just 25%, we would be able to feed everyone who currently suffers from chronic hunger. So these are just a few of the, oh, we can't even, not moving with the slide. Okay, now. Those are the numbers I just showed. So these are just a few of the numbers that show the implications of food waste. But what about the environment? The environment is also suffering from food waste. They pay huge costs. And actually, if food waste was a country, it said it would be the 3rd largest emitter of CO2 emissions. But when we talk about food waste and the environment, we also have to consider resources that are destroyed. Resources such as land, water, and energy. And despite these devastating repercussions of food waste on the environment, we continue to waste food on a daily basis. We should listen to author and farmer David Matsumoto, who said, if we picked our friends the way we selectively picked and culled our produce, we would be very lonely people. So we can see that food waste is an issue. The impact it has on the environment, on a social level, on an economical level is devastating. But why is it occurring? Where is it occurring? And how can we stop it?
So there are main sources, different areas of food waste occurring along the entire supply chain. So as shown in this graph, we can see that those main sources can be directly linked to the economical situation of a region. So in regions such as Africa or Southeast Asia, we see that the largest contributor of food loss or food waste is actually in the production area. This is a direct result of poor infrastructure, transportation, storage, but also the insanely high standards and expectations that we as consumers have to broad-use cosmetics. In wealthier regions, however, we can see that the largest portion of this waste is pushed downstream to the consumption area, so meaning retail and households. We see when people have the luxury of an abundance of food, it becomes an issue of food waste and no longer food loss. But why is this waste occurring along the entire supply chain? Well, just as bad habits form in individuals, so do they on an organizational level. And if not identified and mitigated, they will stick. So by gaining more insights into the quantities and implications of food waste, the urgency to address this issue is growing. And we've seen that in the past, it has been extremely difficult to set regulations or standards because there was a huge lack of numbers. And only recently, the severity of this issue is starting to get more attention since we've been able to associate numbers to the cost, the quantity, but also the environmental impact of food waste. So by having a better understanding of food waste, we can take more efficient and informed steps in order to tackle it. And this is why today here at GRIF, we would like to focus on the implications of food waste in the hospitality industry.
So all you can eat, I'm gonna try this, in Brazil is something like comida a kilo, in Japan it's Viking, and in Swedish it's very roughly something like smorgasbord. Anyway, the point is, all you can eat, it's an international concept of stacking your plate to the top. But whether you can eat all you can or not, this food has been grown, purchased, shipped, prepared, and served. And its final destination, the rubbish heap. As consumers continue to stack their plates with more than they can eat, chefs are demanded to fill this insatiable appetite. This, along with the fact that we can't have a complete overview of what's happening in the back of house during the peak hours, means that our bins are filling up, and at the end of the day, the content remains a mystery. And herein lies the problem. Throw it in, close the lid, and take it away. In this industry, we face high costs and low profit margins. That means there's very little room for error to stay afloat. The costs vary between restaurant types and countries, but typically we see that labor and food are constantly battling for first place. They range between 25% and 38%. So we're constantly looking for ways to reduce our costs. But right under our nose, our bins are filling up with our time, our energy, and our money. So now Anna's going to show you some of the money and some of the numbers that are behind the food in the bin.
Yes, but first I would like to ask you guys a question. So who of you owns, runs, or works in a restaurant or a hotel? If you could put up your hand. Okay. And who is measuring food waste at the moment in this outlet? Oh yeah, a few, okay. Just checking if you guys are still awake. No. But if you're not measuring food waste at the moment, you might want to consider this. Let's look at some of the benefits. So studies run in the food sector have shown that restaurants were able to reduce their food waste by up to 70%, leading to a food profit margin increase of up to 8%. We recently ran a study in Switzerland in the luxury hotel segment, and this outlet was able to save 2,400 Swiss francs in just 1 month. That's roughly 9,000 dirham. The crazy part here is that it was simply the result of opening the user's eyes to the issue and showing them where exactly the key problem areas lie in their operations. But outlets not only save on food cost or disposal cost. No, they also have a really positive, measuring food waste also has a really positive impact on their CSR strategy, for example. With more and more pressures from the consumers for sustainable products, restaurants turn to all forms of innovations in order to meet their growing standards, but also differentiate themselves from the competition. And after all, it's a good cause to fight for, because the food sector alone accounts for 30% of the world's total energy consumption, and nearly 1/4 of the greenhouse gas emissions worldwide. So if you ask any chef, they will not deny that they're wasting food. It's part of their job, of course. But most of them also believe they have a good overview of what's filling up their bins. And while this might be true for some of them, we see time after time that this is not the case for most of them. And this is why it's so important to measure, as we heard in the presentation before as well, because what gets measured gets done.
So why is now the time to address this issue? Well, as Anna mentioned before, in the past we had a lack of data, a lack of numbers. But now as we start to measure, we can start to quantify food waste. And as we quantify it, we can start to set standards and regulations. A big step forward in terms of initiatives has been the 12.3 initiative by the UN to have global per capita food waste on a retail and consumer level, but also on food loss in the supply chain and production chain. This is a goal set by the UN for 2030. As a result of this initiative, we've already seen government organizations and corporations taking action. In countries like France and Italy, we see initiatives set forth and legal regulations being put in place that penalize or incentivize food loss or waste in a retail level. And then we have model countries like the UK or Denmark that have already been able to reduce their food waste by 20% in the past 5 years. So what about here? What about Dubai? In Dubai, we see a growing awareness towards food waste as they move towards a zero food waste tolerance. We heard from Dubai that they plan to be the first city in the Middle East to achieve zero food waste, which is a great thing because actually the UAE spends over 13 billion dirham each year on food waste. A huge source for this is actually the hotel industry. 50% of the food served at a buffet is said to be thrown away. One initiative that was set forth last year in April is a UAE Food Bank initiative. This allows hotels and companies, restaurants, to donate their leftover foods to low-income families and laborers. Another great step in the right direction has been the partnership with the FAO, where the partnership looks to establish a regulatory food work framework policy in order to address the issue of food waste. So we see that the awareness here is growing, and that's a good thing because we also see that it is a huge problem here in Dubai. Anna and I have been here for 3 days, and we're so fortunate with the delicious and the variety of food that we're eating. It's amazing. But we're also constantly shocked by the plates that are being taken away, stacked with food, or the buffets that are being completely thrown away. So we're excited to see that the awareness is growing. We're excited to see where Dubai is going to move in the coming years and what initiatives will be set forth to tackle this issue.
So yeah, while large players and even governments are starting to take action, we also see a change on an individual level. Within the private sector, we see that people are becoming more and more aware of the issue, and thus solutions to tackle the issue are becoming more obvious. Because the more we measure, the more we know, the better we can act, and the greater is the impact. So what is the solution? How can changes be made without jeopardizing the offer or the quality to our guests? There are currently solutions out there to measure your food waste. Most common solutions include, for example, consultants that come for a temporary time and do an audit in the restaurant, or manual tracking devices where you write down or you type in what you're throwing away. This, of course, seems a bit time-intensive and also a bit like a lot of effort, but we're excited to see that there's also new technologies coming on the market, AI-based actually, who are trying to simplify and automate this process. So we're excited to see how they will disrupt the market. But until then, until you have the time to get one of those food waste measurements or management solutions, the first step it takes is to get curious what is filling up the bins in your restaurant or hotel. Because which item is thrown out the most? Where does it come from, and what is it especially? The point here is what gets measured gets done, or saved in this case. So by shining a light on food waste, we not only raise awareness in the back of the house, but also for the end consumer, the customers. So let's think twice before we send those ugly fruits to the fire or throw out this perfectly edible meal. And let's start thinking about how we can repurpose certain items. Because at the end of the day, if we open our eyes, we can bring back the value of all food so it is appreciated and not wasted. So all we ask today from you is, after lunch, when you leave the buffet, have one last look at all this delicious food stacked on the tables, and just be aware that this is most likely to end up in the bin. Thank you very much, and we're happy to chat with you after lunch or during lunch. Thank you.